The lack of overt nuclear signaling in the 2025 crisis does not necessarily imply low risk. It reflected a deliberate choice by both India and Pakistan to contain the crisis below the nuclear threshold. And we saw that, thankfully, saner has prevailed. However, what cannot be ignored is the fact that the crisis did mark a notable escalation in conventional operations, which included the first and probably the first and the largest scale aerial engagement we've ever seen between two nuclear armed states. India conducted its standoff missile strikes across several regions and on several Pakistani air bases, while Pakistan responded with advanced air combat and precision-guided retaliatory strikes. This scale of engagement could spiral into a more serious confrontation, which could pose risks of escalation to a nuclear level. And it's interesting, like it's useful to mention that these risks are not only deliberate, but also inadvertent and miscalculation related. So both sides in this conflict were employing dual use, dual capable delivery systems. They were operating under compressed decision timelines, and they were targeting areas that, could potentially result into a further escalation of the crisis and can increase the risk of miscalculation. Moreover, the geographic proximity of the conflict and the high-speed decision-making, like I've already mentioned, it means that these leaders and these military officials are making decisions that are very time-sensitive. And they don't have days, but maybe hours or minutes to interpret what the adversary is trying to signal and then come up with a response. This environment amplifies the dangers of inadvertent or mistaken escalation. And it's useful to also not forget that one of the key reasons why this crisis didn't spiral into something further was because of third-party mediation. The US and some other countries, they played a key role in facilitating back channels and de-escalation that happened. Without this timely intervention, it is unclear how the crisis might have evolved. So even with this de-escalation, the post-crisis trajectory remains concerning. And now we see that in the next phase, we've already heard, for example, Modi's statement that this is just a pause of military action and they will retaliate against any further attacks, or any future terrorist attack will be considered as an act of war. Meanwhile, you also see aspects like India's suspension or abeyance of the Indus Waters Treaty, which is stated by the Pakistanis as a clear red line. So the weaponization of water arrangements, it adds another layer of risk, especially given Pakistan's stated position on the treaty's strategic importance. And these are all factors that are still remaining and that can still fuel the crisis further, even though for the moment it might have paused. And this all is happening as both sides are preparing for, the next version of this crisis. They're expanding their capabilities. They're acquiring systems that allow for faster, longer range, and more precise strikes. And this preparation for future encounters suggests that strategic deterrent stability does remain fragile in the region. The key takeaway I would like to say is that the absence of nuclear signaling does not necessarily imply strategic stability. It highlights how high-risk conventional operations can take place under the nuclear shadow with very minimum margin for error. And the absence of escalation should not be taken as evidence that the risk has disappeared. This crisis has demonstrated that how technological advances and the ambiguity around what is a clear victory or not, they continue to pose serious challenges to managing escalation in South Asia, and misperception remains a serious threat.